Good morning, happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining us here on KXAN Live. I'm your anchor, Esmeralda Zamora, and with me today is Kristen Curry for our Kristen's Classroom segment. Hi, Kristen, how are you doing?
Good morning. Pretty good. It was a busy morning, early start to the morning with storms and showers moving through central Texas, but got some good rain out of it. Storms are clearing, so we can look forward to a milder day.
Yeah, yesterday our sky cam was completely gray, and today it looks so clear.
A little better, yeah, a little better. And I think as the day progresses, we should see more and more sunshine, less and less of that cloud cover. So we'll get a little bit of a brief break here between cold fronts.
Aside from the rain, something special happening tonight is the snow moon, and
Yes.
you're going to tell us all about it, right?
Absolutely. So today's Kristen's Classroom focusing on February's snow moon. But before we get into a full moon and all that, I figured we'd talk about moon phases. So I loved this graphic put out by NASA because I think it gives a great representation of what we're seeing and what we're not seeing. The sun is the only star that we have that shines on us to where it would reflect and obviously give us daytime or lack thereof, nighttime, shining on us as planet Earth and the moon. So if you think about the light that the sun projects onto Earth, the moon lunar cycle, as it orbits around our Earth, you're getting different amounts in different parts of the moon that are lit up and facing us. So with the new moon in that very far left diagram there of Earth, you can see that moon is actually being shined from the back side. So we're looking at the dark side of the moon, if you will, because there's not going to be any light being shined or reflected back on it. Now, it goes through each cycle, right? The full moon is when we're getting the full side of that moon being lit up, and as seen from Earth, we can see that full disk, but then it slowly starts to fade back into that new moon phase where the other side is being lit, and that happens at about 29 and a half days. The lunar cycle is 29 and a half days for it to go new moon to full moon, back to new moon. So that's how we get our full moons. Now, with that 29 and a half day cycle, that typically lines up to about one full moon each month. And it gets us to these fun names that are given to the full moons of each month. And this is based on Native American history and culture, to where they would actually use the moon as a way to track the seasons and what they needed to do to stay ahead of the potential incoming weather. So I've listed all 12 here, starting first with the January full moon being nicknamed the wolf moon. The February moon is called the snow moon because it is said that that's when we typically see some of the heaviest snowfalls. And that obviously, is playing out right now. We talked about this earlier, the fact that we've got big time winter storms moving to the north of us, burying parts of DC and about 6 inches of snow yesterday. And there's another storm on its heels. So although we might not get a whole lot of that snowfall down here in Texas, we can get a little bit. Typically February brings some big snow. So way back when, that's what they nicknamed the full moon in the month of February.
And Nick even mentioned to us yesterday here on KXAN Live that the freeze season is not over. So it's a possibility.
No, for sure. Yeah. And moving forward, March is given the nickname that worm moon when we see the full moon in March, because that's typically when the ground would start to thaw and the earthworms would come out. April's full moon, nicknamed the pink moon because that was the earliest start to some of the flowers blossoming. May's full moon, the flower moon, because that would be when you would see most of the flowers blooming in the late springtime. Strawberry moon in June because the strawberries would start to ripen. July, the buck moon, because the deer, the antlers would start to come through. You'll notice the corn moon, the harvest moon, those kind of self-explanatory. Sturgeon moon, that's a fish that they would stock up on. The beaver moon in November, that would be when they'd set out their beaver traps to get them and stock up on their fur for the colder months. December being the cold moon because we get some of the darker and longer nights here in the year. So I think it's really interesting when they do come up, because there is some slight variations year to year on the day. When they do come up, we try and give you a heads up. Hey, look up. This is, the snow moon. That has maybe peaked this morning, but you're still going to be able to see it tonight. So tonight and tomorrow night, you're still going to see that appearance of the big full moon. Now, I will warn you, we've got clouds tomorrow. So tonight will be that opportunity to take a peek outside.
And Kristen, how long does this snow moon or the pink moon, all the moons, last for? Do we see it for like 3 days, 2 days?
Usually the peak happens at that one day, but it still appears pretty big, that 98 to 99% full. And when we say that, we mean the amount of the moon's disk that we face is lit by the sun. It's also interesting that, the moon rotates around the earth 29 and a half days, but the moon just rotating on itself rotates at the same rate we do. So that's why we're always looking at the same face of the moon, right? We're always looking at the same side. It's just a amount of the sun is not lighting that same side. But this would be able, you'd be able to see it tonight and tomorrow night, weather permitting. But I do think it's something cool. It's a teachable moment. Sometimes we can see the super full moon, and that would be when the moon is closest to us on its approach in its orbit, so it appears even bigger. Obviously, we know the moon doesn't change sizes, right? It's still that big hunk of cheese, still the big block of rock that we've got out there. So sometimes as it moves closer to Earth, it appears bigger. So when that lines up with the moon phase being in the full moon, that's when you get these huge, the photos are phenomenal. I'm sure some have seen it. These huge moon photos where it looks like the sun at night. So we don't have a super moon this time around, but you will see the full snow moon tonight.
Yay, I'm excited. I have plans to stay out late tonight, so I'm
there
going to
you go.
go out and look at it. What kind of effects does the moon phases have to us here, or to our wildlife, or to our waters?
I'm sure the animals would respond to that, especially, with more of the sun lighting the moon. You're able to see a little bit more at night. So I would assume that might be a little bit more activity for animals. Obviously, we know the tides are affected by the gravitational pull. And so that's more of the position of the moon than it is the phase of the moon. The phase of the moon is just solely related to the amount of sunlight being shown directly at the moon or being reflected from the earth on the moon. But I do think it's kind of cool to think about way back when
they would rely on the moon.
Yeah, before calendars, before clocks. They would see that full moon and think, oh, okay, this lines up with when the earthworms start to come out, or when the deer starts to, grow their antlers, when the strawberries start to ripen.
When the flowers bloom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just kind of, it makes you think, like, this is where we started so long ago, Native Americans here in North America, and still to this day, we call them these names. Now, there's also some other variations too. I know the Old Farmer's Almanac has some as well. But as a reminder, just kind of sneak in a little bit of weather, I think tonight's going to be your best bet to see that. So if you want to take the kids out, say, the moon peak, this is the most amount of sun that's going to be reflected on the moon, shining on the moon for the whole month of February, this morning and tonight. But the rain chance right now is about 10% this morning. That's going to disappear before tomorrow. The clouds come back, the drizzle comes back, and we're going to be much, much colder for tomorrow as well.
And Kristen, about what time is the best time to step out and take a look at that moon?
I would think just, right now with its peak, it's tough because you're battling a whole lot of sun. But later on tonight, once night falls, you should be able to see it. And I would suggest, given this forecast, I'll stretch it out so you can see the back end of the 7-day. Given this forecast, the earlier you do it, the better, just because those clouds are going to be coming in real quick later on tonight. Those are going to be with us tomorrow. I'm sure y'all talked a little bit with Nick Bannon last night about, how crazy this forecast is.
Yes.
How we're seeing such wild swings.
We're jumping up and down,
it's been a long time. And even talking with meteorologist Tommy House with me this morning in the Weather Center, we are limited by the technology and data that we have when it comes to forecasting, and we've made great strides in that. However, it's still an imperfect science. This morning when I got in at 3 a.m., all of our models are saying, hey, we're going to be in the 70s today. I was seeing it with the sunshine we anticipate today, warm front moving through. Well, with some of the newer data coming in late morning, they're keeping us in the 60s. Wow. So we've actually nudged down your temperature for the afternoon since I last saw you on KXAN News today, because the new data is pointing towards this afternoon not being quite as warm as what we were initially thinking. Now, mind you, we only got to 52 yesterday. So
it felt like 30.
Right. It is going to be relatively warmer, and I think just overall more comfortable. But then tomorrow morning, girl, we're waking up to wind chills in the 20s for most of us. So I would encourage you to check in every morning for the next 6 to 7 days. Be very vigilant about checking the Cake Stand weather app, because we are going to be having to make these last minute fine-tune adjustments to these temperatures just because of how in flux we are with this weather pattern.
Yeah, but Kristen, you know, that's just Texas weather. We're used to that.
It is, and it's a whole lot better. I can show you, I was talking a little bit about the national forecast on the CW Austin Mornings, and it could be a whole lot worse, y'all. It could be a whole lot worse. I'll show you just
the country's so divided when it comes to weather.
Yeah,
it's like down here, we're crazy weather. Up there, they're always cold.
Let me see if I can scoot my graphics down and show you the national radar really had quite a bit going on. My computer is not wanting to play today. Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you this big picture, and it just kind of makes you think, all right, we could be looking at several inches of snow like they are in the Midwest and the Central Plains, or very heavy rain with the significant risk of hail and tornadoes down the deep south.
Thank you.
Or bracing for the 5 to 6 inches of rain that California is going to see over the next 24 hours with that storm system out west. So yeah, it kind of puts it into perspective, like, okay, yeah, we'll take the 60s and the mix of sun.
And the mix of rain, too.
Yeah, and that was so impressive. Let me see if I can find that for you. These rainfall totals, very rarely, I mean, if you've been in Central Texas for any amount of time, you know that very rarely do our storms overperform with rainfall. It's hard to get that here. But over the last 48 hours, I mean, we saw anywhere from 1 to close to 3.5 inches of rain in the Austin metro. Wow. And February is typically our driest month. We don't usually get a lot of rain this month. And I'll tell you what, in total, we average about 2.9 inches. So the fact that the airport picked up over 3.25 inches of rainfall, that meets our entire February rainfall normally. So we were so impressed and so grateful for what we got yesterday and what we got even as a little bonus round this morning when it comes to rain.
Yeah, and rain here in Central Texas was much needed for us.
So needed, yeah. And it's kind of nice when our temperatures are, yes, they're chilly, but they're so far above freezing to where there's no concern about any wintry mix, so you could just kind of relax and enjoy that cool, kind of cozy weather, if you will, with it being so chilly and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel briefly with today's 60s and 70s.
Well, our weekend seems to be looking a lot better than the weekdays.
Yes, I think, and I can go back to the Saturday too, because we know Valentine's Day is on Friday, don't forget. I do anticipate Saturday to be milder in those 70s. But come Sunday, it is going to be much, much cooler. Let me see if I can get this to play. There we go. Sunday at 53, and it will be gusty. So if you've got plans for your sweetheart, I think, Friday will be dry. Saturday, there's a little bitty rain chance, a drizzle in the morning. Also, keep in mind, Sunday is the Austin Marathon.
Yes.
And that's going to be really cold, 30s in the morning. So for those who are going to be braving those conditions and tackling that course, I will tell you the temperatures look to drop to the mid-30s Sunday morning. Wow. So you want to bundle up.
Extra bundles
for
that marathon. Well, thanks so much, Kristen, for talking to us about all the moon phases. This was a really fun topic, and I'm sure there's ways for parents to make it fun at home at the breakfast table, learning about these moon phases, and then going out tonight to look at it.
Absolutely. We got, the snow moon tonight, and then coming up next month will be the worm moon, and once that happens, I will let you know again.
Well, we do have your article that you published today, and it's titled February Snow Moon. You can find it on our homepage at kxcn.com, and we have the full list of the months and the names that go with them, right?
Yep, it's all right there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for joining us. We're excited to see what topic we have for next week.
Of course. I'll see you then.